Such a warm, such a warm welcome and for inviting us here tonight. And just wanted to make sure I got it on the screen there that we're recording. So if any of your friends or colleagues want to view this, we all understand it's being recorded. So thank you so much for that great introduction. And I just want to also traditionally introduce myself. So as Tamar said, I'm from Mentasta, Alaska, and my mom is Donna Galbraith, who is from Mentasta. My dad is Jeffrey Mann from Massachusetts. And my grandmother on my mom's side is Molly Galbraith, and she's from Bansaniti, Suslode, and Mentasta. And my maternal grandfather is the late Don Galbraith from Michigan. And we follow a matrilineal clan system when introducing ourselves, as well as passing down our ancestry. And I am zooming in from the traditional homelands of the Tanana Valley. And my son, my 8-year-old son, Jason, and I made this great land acknowledgement. And so he painted this, and you can check it out on PBS Kids. And it goes through a whole activity. We're really trying to promote doing land acknowledgements and helping engage with families. And I'll turn it over to Sydney.
Goodness, Yatibaey. Yeah, I'd also like to take some time to practice my language here. So, Ganesh Chish, Ha'iyadi, Tlaitkanach Achsai Sydney Isaacs, Tlawakdach, Klingat Ayahat, Yusakajik, Yuhat Duasak, Klingat Kanach, Cha'ak Ayahat, Kakusiatan Nachat Si'i, Sarkar Kwandach Ayahat, Atlain Ganesh Chish. And just to echo what Yatibaey said, we are a matrilineal culture as well in the Tlingit area. If I were to do my introduction properly, I would have introduced my mother, the land she comes from, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and so on and so forth. But I'm still learning. And what I said in Tlingit there was, thank you, honorable people, for being here. My English name is Sydney Isaacs. I'm Tlingit from Clark, Alaska. I come from the Kakusitan clan, which is the man's footprint house. My crests are eagle, wolf, killer whale, and red sockeye salmon. And my clan comes from Sarkar, Alaska. And yeah, just thank you so much for allowing us to be here to share what we have with you. It's great to see some faces here. And are you okay with me sharing Yatibaey, our presentation?
Yeah, that would be great.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll skip right along here. I think we already covered this slide. I think we know what's going on. I'll send it back over to you, Yatibaey.
This is great. I'm just going to share with you guys that we have this incredible kind of new way of leading the production as far as the way things have been done previously in the past. And so this clip here kind of gives you a little bit of the backstory and how Molly of Denali got started.
Hi, I'm Sovereign. And I'm Sequoia. Welcome to the world of Molly of Denali. A new show coming to PBS Kids. I play Molly, a feisty 10-year-old Alaska Native girl. Hey everyone, it's me, Molly, coming to you from way up high in Mom's plane.
She is gregarious, she's curious about the world, such a role model to kids.
Have fun!
As Alaska Native people, as indigenous people, it is incredibly meaningful for our children to see themselves represented on the screen. It's a positive image that children can feel good about.
Being a part of the first Alaska Native show makes me feel like I'm making an important change.
Never underestimate the power of Molly.
Kids are going to love Molly. She and her friends go on lots of adventures, and they use information to help them. Looks easy enough. Okay, I'll do it. Woohoo! You're the best!
Molly of Denali is groundbreaking because it's the first children's television program to really focus on developing informational text, knowledge, and skills.
Got it.
Informational texts teach us about the world around us.
Woo! Yay! We found it!
Alaska is such a wonderful context for the Molly of Denali universe. Molly of Denali also has children interacting with informational text much as Molly and her friends do within the show.
We're in luck. Your hero has a blog.
When WGBH set out to make this project, they really went about things in the right way, which is partnering in a really deep and meaningful way with the Alaska Native community. And we said we wanted Alaska Native people at every level of production, and that's happening.
Finally!
I'm helping create content that Alaska Native kids can see and be proud of. And it fits within who we are. We're storytellers.
Part of the beauty of this series is sharing our Alaska Native values in a way that shows how connected we truly are.
The most important thing I want kids to take away from this show is that the Native culture is still very alive.
The stories are absolutely universal.
That's it! Whoa, what's it?
It's about everyone taking care of each other
Molly.
and trying to make this world a better place.
Never give up. So get ready for big adventures and big fun. Molly of Denali, coming this summer on PBS Kids. Oh yeah.
So as you guys saw in that
Hi.
clip, our former and first creative producer, her name is Princess Johnson, and she and I are good friends and have known each other since we were teenagers. So it's great to have her started with the show, and then she's also been continuing to support by writing as well as being one of our Alaska Native advisors. And we really want to continue with the spirit of being an inclusive production and making sure that we're showing an authentic representation and story. And a little bit about how Molly of Denali got started was actually through an idea that our executive producer, Dorothea Gillum, had. She grew up in northern New York, and Wegmans, which is a grocery store on the East Coast. I've been in it a couple times, not necessarily in New York, but in other locations. And it's actually quite a cool grocery store. But when she grew up, the town and culture and community really centered around Wegmans. And so she wanted to do a story about a store and how kids can interact, and they love to play store as well. And so she shared that idea with a coworker of hers, Kathy Waugh. And Kathy loved the idea. And at that time, it was when Barack Obama, President Barack Obama was coming to Alaska. And so there was a lot of conversation about Alaska in the media at that time. And so they thought, well, why don't we do this series in Alaska? And that's how the idea came to be. But they knew that it wasn't their story to tell, and that it would be important to reach out to Alaska Native people to make sure that they were a part of the onset of the idea and brainstorming. And so they somehow reached out to my friend, Dewey Hoffman, who you see on the screen left. And Dewey just kind of opened the doors to our community and many of the people here. These are some of our folks that are on the Alaska Native Advisory Council. And so next to Dewey is Rochelle Adams. And then we have Adeline, I forgot Adeline's last name. Rayboff, that's right. And then she's Princess's mom, actually, and Princess Johnson. And in front is Luke Titus, our elder, and he is actually, his story about experiencing the boarding school era himself is the inspiration behind our very first episode, Grandpa's Drum.
And yeah, it was really powerful to just hear Luke's story and memories behind that. And one thing that's really just great about Molly is that with each story and with our Alaska Native Advisory Group, we kind of pushed forth some of our Alaska Native values what we did is like each region has their own different set of values that you could find, I think at the University of Alaska Fairbanks or something. But what our group did was come together from different regions and identify the ones that were very universal, that were spread across all different Alaska Native tribes or groups. And so you could see here that out of these 10 to 12, I forget how many there are, quite honestly, but each story is written with one of our values in mind. So that way it comes across to hopefully everybody that, we're authentic and that you could feel our values in each story that we tell. And one thing that's really exciting that we do here is we kind of keep track of them to see like which of these values are being hit. So that way we could ensure that we are highlighting and uplifting each value. So not one of these is more important than the other, they're all equally important. And so tracking this sort of thing is just a wonderful way to show like, look, here it is, our values are alive in these stories, each and every one. And it's just really cool to experience. And not only that, but we also incorporate our Alaska Native languages. And by doing that, we had to reach out to some other folks, some fluent speakers of the language to help us incorporate it, because that is something that is huge for, I feel like each and every one of us, is that language revitalization is just really, really important. And so you'll see we have a subset of advisors here. We have Lance Hune Twitchell, Lorraine David, Alan Hayton, Marjorie Tabo, Joel Isaac, and Aussie. All of these folks are just wonderful to work with. And whenever we go through our scripts and whatnot, we're always keeping in mind our language and what we can sprinkle in here and there. That's like where Masi Cho came from, so it's just really nice to be able to work with these really talented folks and to preserve our language in these stories as well, because, they were once lost or darn near lost, and it's nice to capture them in that sort of way. And not only that, incorporating our indigenous people and our ways goes across everything, just about every different subset you could think of for building a show. There is an indigenous person there, and it is our goal to make sure that that they're Alaska Native. But it takes a while. This is something that's new to Alaska, I would say, from my own experience. I don't know how you feel, Yatibaey. Is that we're all about growing the talent. It's there. We just need to grow it, cultivate it, and share it with other folks so we could get more diverse voices in production, basically. Sorry, Yatibaey, I don't want to cut you off.
Oh, you're good. I was just going to add, Sydney was a part of the fellowship and then became a part of the production team. And I think that really speaks to the growth that we've seen on the show. And as she mentioned, we had the writers mentorship program and worked with several Alaska Native writers to develop their talents for writing a show. And within an 11-minute, time frame, and trying to include an Alaska Native value plus at least 2 Alaska Native words. That's our goal anyhow with every script. And we're really grateful that all of the folks that were part of the workshop are now writers for season 2. And we've just been continuing to increase the indigenous representation at all the different levels of the production. And it's been really cool because Sydney and I have been a part of reaching out to our design crew with Atomic Cartoons. And I'm getting a little ahead of myself and Sydney, but I just wanted to mention that, we've been working with the artists as well, even though they're out of British Columbia, Canada. And one of the main art directors with their team was sharing that after we had kind of this group meeting of, indigenous minds of Mali, that the artist really gained a lot of confidence, and she felt like their creativity just kind of really blossomed and took off. And I think it really speaks to when you have people who are representative of your culture and background, and you have those connections, you can feel more comfortable in your skin and with who you are and what you produce. And we definitely see that, throughout the show.
Absolutely. And that goes alongside with, casting workshops and who we cast for each and every character that you hear on the show. That was another large project that we all undertook to try and find these folks that were in these rural areas and whatnot. Alaska Native folks, indigenous folks from British Columbia and Canada. And eventually that led us to find our Molly, Sovereign Bill. This is actually her first role ever in this kind of industry or voice acting in general. She's Muckleshoot and Tlingit. Trying to think of where she comes from. I think Seattle or so. Yeah, and it's just being a part of this project is one of those things where it's like, wow, how lucky are we to reach out and find someone, to be the voice of Molly. And the same thing goes for Tui and just about every other character that you could think of. It's just mind blowing to me.
And kind of going back there just to Sovereign Bill, I don't think I ever shared this with you, Sydney, but I realized, or Sovereign's mother, Robin, and I realized that we had actually previously been in the same education circles, and I got to be a guest speaker for the Washington Indian Education Association conference several years ago when I was part of the National Indian Education Association. And so it's just amazing just how many circles go on throughout life. And you think you've met a person, once and you're done, but years later they come back.
That is so true. That is so true. And that kind of makes me think of even my time at IIA, because I'll definitely get into depth about the fellowship, but when I was applying for it anyways, I was interviewed by Princess, our former creative producer. And when we hopped on our Skype call or Zoom call, we had this moment of I know you from somewhere and I don't exactly know where I've seen you. And it didn't come out till way, way later. She was at my graduation from college. We took a picture together, all the Alaska Natives together that were at IIA took a picture. And it was just small world, Indian country, Native country, we all end up knowing each other one way or another. Even to add on to that too, Sovereign's folks from the Tlingit side are related to some folks on my grandpa's side, which is really nuts. So very small world. And yeah, again, just going back to the fellowship and the program of itself, a little history, I guess, of how I even found it was, didn't happen until much after I graduated college, actually. But the president of IIA remembered that I was Alaska Native. I wanted to make cartoons that, shared my culture with other folks just to make sure that we preserved it. And he was like, there's something happening. There's something in the works. I would love it if you'd apply. And I was like, okay. And all the while, the same thing's going on at Atomic and whatnot. So this whole thing was building. And this fellowship program was only intended to be a 10-week thing. That's all it was, for 3 days a work week, 4 hours a day. And when I did finally get it after rounds and rounds of interviewing and being like, hey, I know you somehow, I landed the fellowship. And it was during my time, right at the start, I just understood right away with the how much Mali is, that and how little time that I got. It just didn't make sense to me to only be there for 4 hours a day for 3 days a work week when I only have 10 weeks. That didn't make sense. And so I just pitched the idea back to my managers at GPH. I just asked if I could volunteer my time because I wanted to see it all, no sugarcoating, no nothing. And they were like, okay, we'll check in. And once it got approved, bam, I was in. And from there, about 8 weeks into my fellowship, I was pulled into the office, and they wanted to hire me full time as a production assistant at the time, and flip tables with excitement, of course. So I moved out here, and I'm so rude, I forgot to tell you all that I'm actually moved to Waltham, Massachusetts, the homeland of the Wampanoag folks. That's where I'm zooming today. And, I've been here ever since. The rest is history. And one of the things that was really, really special is that not only did this II fellowship start, but it's continuing. And so we had another II fellow come out who I actually went to school with, small world. And again, he's such an artist, and it was just a true joy to work with him. But just happy to report all in all that we're still continuing our work with II to find these indigenous people, these voices, and to introduce them into Mali. And sorry, I have a long spiel here, but it leads me into another story of, some of the things that I've done here. And it's just been quite an honor, I guess, to say the least. One story in particular from season 1, you could watch it, I believe, on the PBS Kids video app, but it's called Tale of a Totem. And it just so happens that I am also an apprentice carver of totem poles. I spent 3 summers with a master carver working on them on my hometown, my home village of Klawock, Alaska. But since I was 5, I've been practicing my traditional arts, being taught by my master carver, because that's just kind of the way it is in my village. And I was really excited to know that we were having a totem pole story. Of course, my lit up like a Christmas tree. I was so excited. But the thing was also at the time, before we really started to get the ball rolling with finding these indigenous people, artists, these folks at Atomic just didn't quite understand the gravity of what it takes to build a totem pole. It's not a lost art, but it's a specific art that very few people know. And so the pole on the grayscale picture there on the left side, that was what they pitched us of how this pole was going to look like. And looking at it, and thank goodness they shared it with me, but I was able to recognize this pole. It actually, aside from the middle part, just the top blue piece and the red piece is actually coming from one pole in Ketchikan, Alaska. It belongs to a clan. It's a clan pole, and there's a lot of specific rules when it comes to culture, clans, ownership. Yatibaey, I'm sure you know it too. There's just these rules. And I knew right off the bat that this would not fly. This is not okay to do ever, to take a pole apart and to put it however you want to. And just thinking about the permission and everything, it was just huge red flags. So I just looked at the team and I said, hey, let me draw a totem pole, please. Let me design one for you. I could do it pretty darn okay. And that way, when I draw this totem pole, it's going to be a gift. It's coming from me to you. It'll be okay. No clan owns it. Mali owns it. This is Mali's totem pole. What do you say? And talked with Atomic and talked more with our GBH partners, and they're like, okay, let's do it. We want to do this right. And that's always a good thing to hear. So the pole on the right side is drawn by me and taken by from me to Atomic so that they could turn it into what you see on the television. And I'm just, again, really proud to say that that pole is Molly's, and we did it the right way. So anywho's, small story from me.
That is so awesome. And I'm just so grateful that, we're making sure that we're authentically representing not only where Molly is from, but all the different Alaska Native cultures and as many of the diverse characters that we have within the show. And the stories often come from, lived experiences and then shaped into, the smaller episodes that you see. And of course, there are a lot of outdoor adventures specific to Alaska. And if you see on the bottom side of this picture here, you'll see the Gwich'in constellation. And it's part of actually the intro to Molly of Denali in every show. And we have one of our upcoming season 2 stories that's going to get a little bit more into Gwich'in constellations and looking at the sky and, figuring out what is there according to our indigenous eyesight and perspective. And the first fish, also canoeing, teamwork, also, of course, IT, as we heard about from Nell Duke, and that beginning clip is very important and pretty amazing. This is the first show, to my understanding, that has ever tackled informational text. And it's a way to engage, with the environment around you and solve problems by reading and looking at words, investigating what they mean. And Molly and her friends do it in a fun way. So it's not boring. But also a part of our curriculum, of course, is our oral storytelling, because as many may know, our traditions and ways of life were passed down from our ancestors orally. And here in Alaska, the stories that we shared with our children were often told during winter activities because it's so dark and lonely. And so in order to pass the time in the evenings, we would gather and share stories, and they're often lessons. But one of the interesting things that also are part of our stories is they're different than many, Western types of stories. They don't always have a beginning, middle, and an end, or a beginning and an arc and a problem solving. You're often like listening to an elder, and then they just stop, and you're like, what? Wait, is there more? and you just take from it what you will. And also, navigating that within, the GBH system, and, the different ways that Western society has traditionally told stories has been an area of growth for all of us, because now we have many Native writers who grew up with these traditional stories and want to make sure that we're accurately, of course, representing our stories, our ancestry, our history in a way that's not disrespectful. And so it's very much a conversation and balance and continual growth. It's a lot of fun. Today, for example, Sydney and I got to be part of a conversation where we are talking about an episode coming up called Links to the Past. And Lynx is spelled Lynx because it's about a Yupik story involving a real lynx. And, when we were when we were reading the script, in my mind, it's one way, but in our design team's mind, it's another way, because dancing is often done standing up. But in the Yupik way, the men kneel when they're dancing, and everybody either has to have gloves on or have a dance fan or something in their hands, because of the belief system indicates that if they don't, protect their hands in that way, that they could invite evil spirits. And so we had to have this conversation, and it's just really interesting to be part of, a children's media production where you don't necessarily anticipate having these big, conversations or deep conversations. And yet here we are having them and growing, right? We all have different amazing things to contribute to society. And I'm so grateful to have Sydney as a partner, and to not just be like the sole Alaska Native voice, in the production team saying this is what should happen. And so it's great to, have each other's back and support each other as we share these stories. And up next, we're going to actually watch a clip. But before we watch it, this is going to be part of our premiere. So you get a little sneak peek. And it's the first part of it is when Molly learns about one of our Alaska Native civil rights advocates, Elizabeth Peratrovich. And you may have heard about her, but in 1945, she stood up in front of the territorial legislature here in Alaska and advocated in front of Governor Gruning at the time to pass the Anti-Discrimination Act. And if you can imagine, during that time in the 40s, women had their place, and it was not in the legislature. And especially Native women, Native people. And at that time, actually, just a little background, I'm an educator, so I'm a big nerd. And this was the big resolution that we first passed. Princess and I passed with the district, so I'm like super excited about it. But that she was the first, civil rights advocate, and she stood up for our people. And at that time, Native people were not allowed to vote unless they denounced their culture and stopped speaking their native language. And in order to vote, they would have to bring a white person with them to the polls who would vouch that they no longer spoke their native language or practiced their native ways. And so this amazing advocate, Elizabeth Peratrovich, was like, hey guys, this is wrong. And you need to pass this Anti-Discrimination Act. And it was actually 15 years before the civil rights movement that occurred with Martin Luther King Jr. in the lower 48. Oh, and I'm sorry, before you press play, the second part, as after we learn about Elizabeth Peratrovich, you'll see that Molly and Tui have faced a little bit of discrimination from some tourists that came to Kaya expecting to see a different type of Native, and their reaction to these tourists. Thanks, Sydney.
Auntie Myrna.
Shania, Tui, your grandpa told me what happened to you today. If I had been there, I would have given them a stern talking to.
I'm a little glad we didn't have to see that.
I asked Myrna to tell you about when she saw Elizabeth Peratrovich.
You actually saw her?
When I was just a little girl.
You were a little girl? I mean, of course you were. I'm just trying to picture your story.
In 1945, Elizabeth was in Juneau. Stores in Juneau still refused to let Native people in. Elizabeth wrote letters and talked to lawmakers. She helped make a law that said you couldn't discriminate. You couldn't be unfair to Native people. Finally, the day came to decide on passing the law. I was watching.
I must remind you, Senators, that Native people are treated unfairly in this state. How do you think Native children feel when they see signs that read, "No Natives allowed," and aren't allowed in the same school as white children? Today, you can tell the world how we are treated is wrong and pass this law to make discrimination in Alaska illegal.
After Elizabeth's powerful speech, the law passed. past. People couldn't keep Native people from entering a store or movie theater or anywhere else.
Elizabeth Peratrovich was amazing.
Yes, she stood up for Native people, and it changed the minds of so many.
This coin reminds us of all the hard work it took to gain equal rights for Native people.
But there's still a lot of work to be done.
You know, you don't have to see those tourists again.
If they don't learn, they might keep saying hurtful things to people. Please, Mom?
Okay, I'll be right here if you need me.
Hey, you two look much more native now. We're ready for our tour.
Before we agree to any tours, Molly and Tui would like to speak to you.
Okay.
My name is Molly Mabray, and I'm also called Shahmia.
I'm Tikana Okami, also called Tui.
It doesn't matter what we're wearing, whether it's a parka or a swimsuit, whether we live here or a big city. If our eyes are blue or brown, we know who we are.
I am Yupik, Koyukon, and Japanese American.
And I am Gwich'in, Koyukon, and Denali. This is the land of our ancestors. Nobody can tell us we are not native enough.
Oh, we really didn't mean to offend you.
Well, it hurt me.
It hurt me too.
But if you're willing to try, you can learn how to not hurt more people.
We'd like to learn.
Then we'd like to take you on a different kind of tour. We learn from elders in our village. We play and laugh with friends. And we've been doing awesome things on this land for thousands of years. We also have an incredible history full of people who stood up for Alaska Natives.
Elizabeth
Elizabeth Peratrovich.
Yes, Elizabeth Peratrovich was amazing.
We're really sorry we said those things to you before.
When we get home, we're going to learn about the native people on the land where we live.
Because of you two, we know we need to do better.
You keep that as a gift. You never know when you need a little reminder.
The coin that you saw that was featured in the series, we had to get special permission from the Mint folks to be able to feature it because it's a real coin and just came out 2 years or maybe 3 years ago now, 2018, I believe. And you can actually get one yourself by ordering them online.
Nice. It's super incredible, and just the amount of work that went into getting the permissions to use that coin on screen. There's really weird parameters around it, a lot of legal stuff, but I'm glad they said yes to this episode in particular. And that's just the thing too with Molly. It's more than just a kid's show. It has a lot of great value and meaning to our people, our indigenous people, and our stories. And with it, you can see that it is broad in its reach in many ways. It's grown to be viewed and read for books, digital games, live action shorts, podcasts, a lot of teaching models to be used in the classroom. We're even going through museum exhibit walkthroughs, Yatibaey, with Magic House. Am I allowed to say that? Sorry. Okay. It's just incredible to see the multi-platform reach that Molly can have, that to find people from all over to just share more stories. So it's still growing. There's still a lot more stories to be told, and I'm just really happy that we're able to share a little bit. I don't want to get into too much nitty gritties of potential, future books and podcasts, but they are there. Yeah, and I'm trying to be mindful of time as well. I'm not sure, but Yatibaey, I'll pass it back to you for maybe reflections. I don't know, Tamar, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, sure, and I'd also just love to open it up for any questions as well. If anyone has any thoughts or questions, thank you guys so much for this. And I'm very excited for that season 2 premiere episode. I can't watch clips from it without tearing up. So I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be really powerful. Does anybody have any questions? I'm like trying to see all of you. Well, oh, perfect. I can actually stop recording and then we can